My name is Jaime Peña. I'm part of the coordinating team from the May 16th Collective of Families, a collective that brings together 30 families who were affected by what happened on the 16th of May 1998, a massacre that took place here in the southeast part of the city of Barrancabermeja. That night, a paramilitary group murdered 7 young boys and forcibly detained and disappeared 25 more. But before we get into the details, it's important to tell you how the events unfolded, what happened before those events. The new Grenada Battalion, an anti-aircraft battalion, had given the Order 100, an order that meant that in the spot where the road forks between going towards the airport, which you can see here, and the road that leads to Bucaramanga, that a military checkpoint needed to be set up with tanks. That was the only way in and out of Barrancabermeja. That military checkpoint, in accordance with the order given by the commander of the battalion, had to be in place for 24 consecutive hours. But at 9 p.m., the aforementioned checkpoint was suddenly lifted, and at 9:30, the paramilitary incursion entered. At 9 p.m., the TV program that we were watching as a family ended. My wife went to bed, and my son went into his room briefly, coming back out as he was putting on a shirt, and I asked him where he was going, and he said he was going to meet with a few friends here on the block. So, continuing my story, that night my son left through this door and came out to stand in this spot, where he met up with his friends who were sitting out here in front. Then suddenly some men appeared. One had a mask on, the other stayed on the corner over there. The masked one walked over to where the boys were and took 2 of them from the group. One of those 2 was my son. They started walking away in this direction, and that's when I got to the window and said to him, "Hey, Jesse, what's happening?" He turned in my direction to answer me, but the masked man put a gun in his back and didn't let him speak. Let's continue from what happened next on the corner. Right, so as I got to this corner, the truck was here, facing the ring road or main road. I turned here and started walking. And when I got to where that tree is, ahead on the right, I heard a woman from the other side of the pavement shout, "Hey, it's the MAS paramilitaries. They just slit somebody's throat." Well, at that moment, the first thing I thought to myself was, please let it not be my son. So I kept walking, and when I get to the spot where the young man is, lying on the floor, in the middle of a huge puddle of blood, I realize that it's not my son. And I think, my son is still alive. And I start heading back. On my way back, another woman approaches and says, "Oh, neighbor, they gave your son a real beating when they put him in the back of the truck." That day, the paramilitaries came in from over there, parking the trucks all around to try to take over the football pitch. There were 2 covered 350 trucks and a double-cabin platoon truck. There are about 20 to 30 heavily armed men, some masked, others not. And there were units from the local police force there too, because neighbors have clearly reported it. For the orders they were given out, the way they acted, and because they were wearing military fatigues for exclusive use by members of the police force. What's more, I saw for myself when they were turning around the corner that there were 5 or 6 men from the platoon wearing black vests with the initials of the DAS, Colombian Security Service, on them. So that night, they made people get in line. They threw them to the ground, they kicked them, they beat them, and they shouted swear words at them. "Guerrilla sons of bitches, today you're all gonna die." They had the truck over there, and they convinced some people to get into it. The young man whose throat they cut was killed because he refused to get into the truck, saying, "If you're going to kill me anyway, you might as well kill me here." And one of those bandits got a knife out in front of everyone and cut his throat there and then. Here in this place, the only woman of the 25 people that they took that night was Mar Alexandra Lopez Ochoa, 20 years old, mother of a child. Her brother had already got into the truck, and they weren't going to take her with them. But she told them that if they were taking her brother, then they'd have to take her too. From that moment on, and on saying those words, she has remained in the story of the May 16th collective. And for these facts, and being the only woman, she has turned into a symbol for the families of the May 16th collective. A transcendental point for which I believe was the crux, the key to why the peace negotiations split in two, was when the victims' families were summoned to the dialogue table in Havana. I was a participant in those dialogues, and I participated in the first delegation that took part in the dialogues, comprised of the first 12 victims. There were 60 victims there in total. So it was very important because it was the first time in the world that the victims were head-to-head to confront their victimizers. From my point of view, that split in two the story of the negotiations that took place in Havana. In that moment, no one would have said that those talks were worth anything. But there, we the victims realized that a new idea had been born, a new sense of hope, that we would one day manage to bring about not peace, because we weren't there to negotiate for peace, but instead we were negotiating to get an agreement for a bilateral ceasefire and an end to the conflict. So today, we say the mere fact that 10 or 15,000 men put down their guns is their guarantee. After that, it's for all of us Colombians to build the peace that we want, the peace that we need. We, the victims, after we left Havana, we had a new understanding of what the conflict is, in terms of the way they listened to us and the way they treated us. Today, we can say that it is very possible that we will one day achieve that peace. But there needs to be a more equitable society. Because if it continues, then it's very likely that it will damage these negotiations. So let's all pull together in favor of peace. Let's all pull in the same direction so that finally our children and our grandchildren can finally get to know the peace that we, the elders, have never known. Thank you.